So we describe the landing gear as the nose landing gear and the main landing gear. The A320 is steerable with a hand wheel or with the rudder pedals. And we can also tow the aircraft if we're towing from the nose gear. Wherever we turn the nose gear, then the aircraft will then follow, so to speak. The main landing gear have brakes. So each wheel has a brake unit on it, okay, to be able to perform a braking action when required to do so after landing or during maneuvers, during taxiing, etc. All right. If you ever saw a 737 and compared it to a A320, you can see just by this picture how really, really, really tall the landing gear legs are. Okay, this was a significant difference of how Airbus decided to design the A320 and make the legs really, really long, which means I could lift the aircraft up off the ground, which means I can then put bigger engines on it, which means I could then have doors opening and I could put the gear in and have doors closing to make the aircraft more aerodynamically smooth and therefore fuel economic, fuel efficient, and therefore save money, and therefore everybody will be happy. They learned from the 737, where if you ever see a 737 flying overhead, yes, it does retract the wheels, but you can see the wheels are sitting there in the landing gear wheel well with no covers, no doors. The wheels are just there because I can't put doors on it because it's too low, because the landing gear leg is too small. Okay, so they learned from the Boeing 737 and put these really long gears to facilitate all what we just talked about. All three landing gear legs have a shock absorber, okay, a shock absorbing system, okay, which is has an air and a nitrogen oil mix, okay, so that the oil is the air is for on pressure on landing, and the oil is for recoil, so that it doesn't bounce back up again violently and make everybody in the cabin uncomfortable. And it's regularly serviced to be able to for the quantity of the oil and the air to be at the right height, to have the right, let's call it springiness in its operation. We did say the nose landing gear is steerable, and we can disconnect the steering as well for maintenance. If we're going to tow it, for example, we disconnect the steering mechanism so that the tow truck determines the steering via a tow bar, so that wherever the aircraft gets, or wherever the nose gear gets turned, then the whole aircraft will follow that trajectory. Okay, the landing gear is operated by the green hydraulics, and the brakes are operated by the green system. The normal brakes are operated by the green system, and we also have on aircraft, if the green hydraulic system wasn't available, we wouldn't be able to brake. We wouldn't be able to use the brakes on the aircraft. We have alternate braking system, which is supplied by the yellow system. Okay, so that we have normal brakes are green, and if the green system failed, the yellow system would take over, and we would be able to brake the aircraft in alternate braking mode. You can see now the redundancies that we have always. Okay, we talked about the doors. Okay, we talked about the doors, the differences. So a 737 would have this fixed door, which is mechanically operated. Why is it mechanically operated? Because it's connected to the leg, and it mechanically moves when the leg moves. Okay, so that's inevitable. It's mechanically operated. The main gear doors and the nose gear doors, these are hydraulically operated doors. Okay, so that anytime we're going to initiate a landing gear retraction or retract or stow sequence, then the doors will be hydraulically operated, okay, to initiate the retraction or extension sequence of the landing gear. I'm just going to go back one. I just saw something, this red line here. Okay, just for those of you that work in maintenance now, the qualified ones, if you didn't know or wondering what that red line is, it's a line to the tow truck. Basically, not to exceed that red line, because then you're oversteering the nose landing gear, and therefore you could damage the steering cam on the top. So that line there is a indicator to the guy who's towing the aircraft not to oversteer, okay, and go beyond that line. Otherwise, specific maintenance is required if you oversteer the aircraft. The nose landing gear here. Here is a jacking pad to be able to lift just the leg. We don't have to lift the aircraft to change a wheel. We just lift the leg. Okay, and therefore expose or lift both wheels off the ground. If we're going to change the nose wheels, we invariably change them in pairs, because then they don't have we try to keep the use of the rubber uniform so that we don't cause an imbalance and therefore vibrations. Okay, sometimes it's inevitable. We've only got one nose wheel. We'll change the worst one. The Airbus also has, the 320 has a tire pressure indicator system. Okay, yes, you may say, oh yeah, my Fiat Punto has it. So every car has it nowadays. Yes, but 45 years ago, this was a big thing, to be able to indicate tire pressures remotely in the cockpit without having to go and check the tire pressures every daily check. Okay, so we have a computer connected to all 6 sensors that display the tire pressures in the cockpit at any given time when we select the wheels page. Okay, now some aircraft also have, these are the main wheels. We said the main wheels also have a jacking pad to be able to lift the leg up and change either the left or the right hand main wheel from that leg. Okay, and you can see here this gray outline is the brake unit. So each main wheel has a brake connected to it with 2 hydraulic supplies. Remember, one, the green one for normal braking, and one, the yellow hydraulic supply for alternate braking. Okay, so it's performed in a kind of a shuttle valve, where if there's 3,000 psi on this shuttle valve, then it's pushing one way, and the green normal braking is activated to supply some pistons to brake. And if the green pressure drops, then the shuttle valve will move the yellow over to the other side, which will enable yellow hydraulic system to supply braking by the alternate system. So at any given time, we have braking available. We also have some aircraft, when Airbus decided they were going to make the A320, they promised, oh, we're going to have 30-minute turnarounds. So we have brake fans as well on the main wheels. Basically, it's just a impeller that turns and removes hot air away from the brake in order to cool it down. Okay, so cool it down quicker so that the aircraft turnaround time is shortened, and people the company can make money because they don't have to wait for the brakes to cool before the next departure. In terms of the landing gear extension and retraction, this is a simple diagram which speaks 1,000 words. This would be a picture from a type course, for example. And you have to remember it all relies on 3 valves. So a door selector valve, a gear selector valve, and a safety valve. Okay, or a safety and a cutout valve. So the safety valve, basically the cutout valve, these operate at a speed of, I think it's 240 knots. Okay, at 240 knots, the safety valve operates and disables any hydraulic getting to the door selector valve or the gear selector valve, so that we cannot deploy the landing gear at over 240 knots, because if we did, we'd probably lose the aircraft. Okay, you imagine 240 knots, this massive piece of metal up there, you decide to drop the landing gear, which weighs a couple of tons each, the disruption there would be detrimental. Okay, so above 240 knots, we make it safe, okay, by disabling hydraulic supply to these door selector valve and the gear selector valve, and therefore this cannot operate, okay, without hydraulic supply. Now I have also, if I lost the green hydraulics, I don't have an alternate here. If you lose the green hydraulic system, the only way to extend the landing gear is through a mechanical control, a cable. So this dotted line shows the mechanical control. Will open the cutout valve and allow mechanical operation, okay, of the landing gear. Okay, it would just basically, the cable would unlock the 2 hooks, the landing gear hooks, and the gear would just flop out, and the gravity would just take them down, and hopefully they would lock into position. Okay, there is a brain for the landing gear. It's called the landing gear control and interface unit, and we have 2 of those. They're very important pieces of kit because they provide, if you remember when we did in session 1, when we did chapter 31, the CFDS, they provide all the information about counting legs, for example, counting each time there's been a takeoff and a landing, by counting each time the landing gear has retracted and extended, or the weight on wheels, proc switches, all the signals for proximity switches, be it the landing gear, doors, thrust reversers, all the information of proc switches on the whole aircraft go through these 2 LGCIUs, these boxes, which store the information, switch the information, and distribute the information to all the systems that need to know about it.